Hey there! This video is part of a collaboration series I did with some other Amigurumi artists that you might like. It's part of a fundraiser we're doing for Earth Day. We're raising money for the World Wildlife Foundation, whose mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to diversity of life on Earth. Each of us made a crochet pattern with a few different endangered Amigurumi creatures. The videos will be up here throughout the next month, but you can also download the PDF version by donating to the World Wildlife Fund. To get the downloadable PDFs with full video tutorials for each of these three patterns, visit clubcrochet.com/earthday2021. 100% of donation downloads will be going directly to the organization, and 20% of kit sales and new membership signups for the rest of the month. Enjoy the patterns! Hey there, it's Louie, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to crochet Simon the Sloth. This is my pattern as part of our Earth Day fundraiser collaboration that we're doing for the World Wildlife Fund. I crocheted Simon here. He is supposed to be a three-toed pygmy sloth. There are a few different species of sloth, and the pygmy sloth is actually critically endangered, meaning that it is almost wiped out completely from our planet. Obviously, that is a big issue, as look at how adorable this is. It's so cute, and it would be such a bummer to lose them from our planet. If you like nature and our planet, I highly encourage you donate to the World Wildlife Fund, who are helping to protect our planet, including the pygmy three-toed sloth. You can do so by checking out the link in the description or donating to download the written version of this pattern. There are also some other patterns made by Sir Pearl Grey, who made a black rhino, and Lemon Yarn Creations, who made an adorable red panda. But mine is our pygmy three-toed sloth. I really am proud of this pattern for a few reasons. He can be sitting just like that. There's little magnets in the hands so that he can hold on to things. And I did some really fun things with color changes in the face that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Yeah, so I really hope you like this. Now let's talk about what you need for this pattern. For this pattern, I'm using the following materials. I'm using all worsted weight yarn in a few different styles. So I like using this fuzzy yarn here. I believe this is 100% wool. I really like the fuzzy yarn. I believe it can also be combed out so he can have like long fur, which is more like a sloth, which I really like. I'm also using 100% cotton for in off-white for the claws and in black for our face. Just our little face there. And you need just a little bit of 100% cotton for the brown nose, because the nose I like to be a different type of yarn than our fuzzy yarn for the fur, just so it's a little bit of a contrast, so it's not the exact same kind of yarn. I also like using some black thread for our little smile here. And yeah, that's all we're using for the yarn. Because I'm using worsted weight yarn, I'm using a size G 4mm crochet hook. You'll also need a darning needle. You'll need a darning needle. I like using a crimped end darning needle to help sew in the pieces there, although there's not too much to sew on for this pattern. I'm using safety bead eyes in 8mm, 2 safety bead eyes specifically. And you can see what they look like when they're not in the face. And stuffing, of course, you need some stuffing and some scissors. And then the one material that might be a little bit trickier for you to get is some magnets. I'm using these little miniature magnets. There are 2 magnets per hand to keep him. So he grabs, look, he's coming towards the magnets right now. So I got these little mini magnets, which are perfect for the hands. You can probably also use Velcro or maybe snaps for the claws also, to make them attach. I really like using magnets because it can attach to anything metal too, like a curtain rod or a light pole or something like that. So I really like using magnets in my patterns, especially in this one. If you want to get a kit with all the materials that you need, I have kits available in the shop. You can find links to those in the description down below, and a portion of your purchase of the kit will go directly to the World Wildlife Fund as well as pro membership signup. So if you sign up for a pro membership, which is a thing on my website where you get monthly kits mailed directly to your door, you'll be able to pick between one of our 3 endangered species patterns, and a portion of your sign up goes to the World Wildlife Fund as well. Okay, well, I think that's just about it. If you like this video, make sure to like it and subscribe down below. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and let's just get hooking. We're going to start by crocheting our arms. Specifically, we're going to start with the claws, and then we're going to make our arms. Okay, so we're going to start by making our claws, and we're going to start with our off-white yarn here. And we're actually going to start with a slip knot, which if you have been crocheting these endangered creatures, you might know that we haven't been using our slip knot very much. We've been using mostly the magic loop, which we'll be using later in this pattern as well. But for a slip knot, we're going to just fold this over, make a little circle like this, and then fold that over the end attached to the ball of yarn. And then grab the yarn from the inside and grab the tail end here and pull it. And this is going to create a little knot that you can place over your crochet hook. And you can pull the end attached to the ball, and it should tighten up the knot a little bit. That's how we're going to start our claws. And for our claws, we're going to be doing a repeat 3 times. You can do it less or more, but this is the repeat. We're going to start by chaining 3. 1, 2, and 3. So for a chain, you're just hooking onto the yarn and pulling it through the loop. And once you have 3 chains, we're going to work into the first chain that you made, or the 3rd chain from the hook, and we're going to do a single crochet into that 3rd chain. But we want to work specifically into the back loop. So if you look at the crochet stitches here, I'm going to pull my loop out just a little bit. If you look at our crochet stitches, you'll see we have a top loop, that's this top one right here. We have a bottom loop, that's going to be right there. And then along the back, if you spin it around, you'll see these little spines of the crochet stitches, or the chain stitches, and those are our back loop, and that's what we want to work into. Specifically, this first one that's closest to the knot is the one that we want to work into. We want to skip the first 2, and we want to work into that 3rd one. So let's get our crochet hook in there. Move that needle out of the way. So we're going to single crochet into that first back loop of the chain that we made. We're just going to go into that back loop. You might need your nail to help pry your crochet hook into that back loop there. And then for single crochet, we're just going to yarn over and pull it through that back loop, then yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops on the hook, like that. And we want to repeat that process of doing 3 chains and then single crocheting into the 3rd chain from the hook 3 times total. You can do it 2 times if you want as well. There are 2 different types of sloth. There's a 2-toed sloth and a 3-toed sloth. I'm going to be making a 3-toed sloth because that's what the pattern is, but you can do this 2 times instead of 3 if you would like to. All right, so let's do our second repeat here. We're going to chain 3, yarn over in 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to pull a little bit tighter, and we are going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain from the hook. This one's a little bit easier to see. If you tilt it up, you can see it'll be right there. So right like this. Use your nail to help pry it open, and then single crochet, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're going to do that one more time. Chain 3, 1, 2, and 3. Pull a little tighter. Find that first one, which is easy because if you just turn it, it'll be the one closest to your last claw right there. Pry it over crochet hook and do a last single crochet like that. Okay. And to finish up these claws, we just want to chain 1, and we want to cut the yarn. You want just a little bit, like that's probably fine. And we'll just pull this all the way through. Now we want to make one of these claws per arm, and we want to have 3 arms. So you want to make 3 claws total. So go ahead and, 4 claws total, because we want 4 arms, not 3 arms. So make 4 of your claws, and let's get started on the arms that we'll be attaching these claws to. Okay, next up we're going to be making our arms, and we're going to be using our fuzzy brown yarn for that. And we're going to start by pinching our the yarn between our middle finger and our thumb like this, so that's pointing towards the ground. We're going to go over our index finger, back around the middle, and then go back around the top and make an X with the front, and then go back around the back like that. And then we're going to grab it with our ring and pinky finger like that and close it in. And now you should have an X on one side and 2 parallel lines on the other side. We're going to take your crochet hook, show the parallel lines, and then go under the first one and yarn over with the second, and then pull that under the first one and make a little loop like that. See how we made a little bit of a loop? And now we want to go over the first bar, yarn over the second one. I find it's easiest to help guide the yarn over with your index finger. And then hook onto it, and we're going to pull it through that loop to create a chain, which is going to lock the yarn in place, and now you can pull it off of your finger. Now when I pull this tail end, it'll pull our loop a little bit tighter, and we can work our stitches into the center of this magic loop and then pull it tight at the end to close it tight. Okay, so for round 1 of the arms, we're going to single crochet 8 times into the magic loop. Okay, so we're going to go into the center of the magic loop, yarn over and pull that under the magic loop, and then yarn over again and pull through the 2 loops on the hook like that. That's our single crochet, and we're going to do 8 of those. So there's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I'm going to go ahead and pull this nice and tight. So you just want to pull this tail end, and it'll tighten that up like that. And we want to get a stitch marker now, because we are going to have a lot of different parts of this pattern. So let's go ahead and grab this extra pink yarn that I have, and we'll use this as a stitch marker. This might be a little long, so I'll go ahead and cut it a little shorter. And we're going to place it over the end of our piece like that, like so. And we're going to work around this pink yarn for our first stitch, so that it's locked into place and we can keep track of where the end of the round is. And you should have 8 stitches now. Now we're going to find our first stitch that we made, which is right here. Now it can be difficult to see where these stitches are when you're using this fuzzy brown yarn, but it's going to be right there. The easiest way is you're looking for these V's. If you look down, you got 1 V here, there's another one, there's another one. And if you count back 8 times and find your first one, that's going to be the first one. Yeah, it gets easier to notice where your stitches are as we're going, but it can be a little hard to see where it is because of the fuzzy yarn and because it's so small right now. So we get into our first stitch there. And for round 2, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an increase. So we're going to start right here and do a single crochet in the first 3. There's 1 and 2 and 3. And then we're going to do an increase into our next. So 2 single crochets into this 4th stitch. So there's going to be 4 and 5. And we're going to repeat that process one more time. So we're doing 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase. Let's do that. Repeat again. 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and then an increase right here. 4 and 5. And that's going to bring you up from 8 stitches to 10 stitches. So you should have 10 stitches by the end of this round. And you can see the center is a little bit open, so we're going to pull that tail a little bit more and tighten it up. And then I'm going to pull my stitch marker up and go around like that. That's going to be the end of round 2. For round 3, we're going to do 4 single crochets and then an increase. So we're making 1 more single crochet before we do an increase, and then we're going to repeat that around again. So let's start it. We're just going to go into this first stitch here. We're going to do a single crochet in the next 4 stitches. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then an increase into the 5th. So right here, 1 and 2. Okay, and we're going to repeat that process one more time. So 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then another increase right here. And this is going to bring you up from 10 stitches to 12 stitches. So by the end of round 2 here, you should have, round 3 here, you should have 12 stitches around. I can pull the stitch marker up, and now you have 12 stitches around. Now for the next 3 rounds, rounds 4, 5, and 6, 3 rounds total, we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch around. And this is your opportunity to count your stitches, make sure that you have the right amount. So we got 1, 2, and you want 3 rounds, and each round should have 12 stitches in it. So That's your stitch count if you go to that. So we got 6. I keep going. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we want to do 3 rounds total of that. So there's our first round. We'll just keep going around now. And if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and if you'd like to share your project with me, you can share it by using hashtag clubcrochet on Instagram. That's probably the best way for you to share it. You can also share it on Reddit. We have a new subreddit called just reddit.com/r/clubcrochet. There's also a Discord server that you can share your projects on. And what else? I guess those are the main... Oh, and a Facebook group. Of course, we got our Facebook group. So there's a lot of different ways you can share your projects with the community of other crocheters. And yeah, if you do end up sharing your projects and you would like to tag me, I am at Louie's Loops on pretty much everywhere. This is going to be our last round of just single crochets. We're almost around now. And then after this, we can start sewing on our claws. And I don't know if you can see, but this fuzzy yarn does kind of shed a lot. So there is a lot of fuzzy yarn just pooling up down under the stitches there. Okay, so we got 3 rounds of just single crochets, and we're starting to get this little tube here. Now I'm going to pull my yarn out a little bit because now we want to sew on our claws. So we're going to take your claw, and there's going to be 2 ends. There's going to be a long end and a short end. First, we're going to go with this long end. We're going to thread the end on our needle. And what you want to do is you want to find your increases. So first find your center, which is going to be right here, and then you want to find your increases. So we have increases here. It's kind of hard to see where your increase stitches are in this fuzzy yarn, but I mean, and you don't need to find them really, but it is pretty nice to find them because that is kind of where you're supposed to do it. So if you find your center and you go up, this will be your first increase, and there's going to be your second increase. I know it's difficult to see. You can kind of see there's 2 V's going into 1 stitch, and that is going to be where you want to start. And you want to start by going in through where those 2 meet, right there. You want to pull it all the way through, and you want to try to get it through enough so that that knot gets pulled through the stitch like that. And then we're going to come back out through the stitch above it right there. And then you want to go around the claw like that in the spacing between each claw, and then go back through where you came out right here. Okay, so through the same place, and then come back out through the very center. And you want to make sure that you pull it really tight so that this claw gets pulled in. So watch it get pulled in like that. And then you want to go around it again, around the claw, and then go back down through the center. Make sure you go around the spacing in between the claws there. Like that. Pull it nice and tight. Okay. And then 1 stitch under that right here is going to be the next increase. It's going to be right next to the end of the round. And you want to put your needle in there and thread the other end of your claw onto your needle. And then just pull that, oops, there we go, pull that through. And make sure it's pulled through so that the knot gets pulled in. There we go. And then we can just double knot these 2 ends on the inside really tight and close. Just going to take our knots there. We're going to double knot it. So we'll go 1. Kind of guide that knot back in. Try to make sure it goes as far in as you can. And then we're double knotting it. Like that. And now we can cut the knot, cut it pretty close to the knot, like right there should be good. We'll throw this aside and make sure we stuff our character with our extra threads. So start to collect your threads on the side. Okay, and that's going to be how you sew on the claws of your piece. And if you look at the top, it kind of like makes the claw bend a little bit in one direction or another. Here's some of the final versions of the claws, so you can kind of see what it looks like. See how it's kind of like over this way and this one's kind of pointed inwards? So that's how you want them to be doing that, so that the claws are facing downwards towards the back of your character. So if you look at him, see how my claws are kind of going down towards the ground, towards his butt? Yeah. So don't worry if you're like, oh no, my claws are getting bent in. That's supposed to happen. Okay, so now that we have our claws sewn on, we can keep crocheting around. Get our crochet hook in that yarn there. We'll flip our stitch marker up. There we go. Okay, so now after you crochet the claws, you want to single crochet 1 and then move the stitch marker 2 behind that single crochet. So we're actually going to move our stitch marker over 1 stitch. So let's not crochet around our stitch marker for a second, and we'll single crochet 1, and then we're going to move our stitch marker here. Okay? And this is our new end of the round. Okay, now in our next round, round 7, we want to single crochet 4 and then invisible decrease 1. And then we're going to repeat that 2 times total. So we're going to single crochet 4. Don't forget, you move the stitch marker over. So we're going to start here. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so we move the stitch marker, single crochet 4, and then do an invisible decrease. For an invisible decrease, we want to go only into the front loops of the next 2 stitches. This can, again, be kind of hard to see in the fuzzy brown, but we want to go into only the front loop. So if you're looking at the top of your crochet here, you'll see that you have 2 stitches. So here is under both of the loops. We only want to go under this first, right there, front loop. Okay, so that front loop and that front loop. We want to go under both of those front loops with your crochet hook. So take your crochet hook, go under each front loop individually. I find the easiest way is to go up from the bottom of it, like this, and go up, and then kind of like maneuver your crochet hook around to get positioned under the next one, and then go straight up, and then you're under both of those front loops. And then you can yarn over and do a single crochet into those front loops, like that. Okay, so we're doing 4 single crochets and then an invisible decrease, and then we're going to repeat that one more time. 4 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then another invisible decrease. So we go front loop, and invisible decrease. And that will be the end of round 7. Let's pull our stitch marker up. Now for round 8, we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. So 8 single crochets total. Nice and easy round of just single crochets 8 times. So there's 10 times. There should be 10 stitches. Don't listen to me when I said 8. 8 is the next round. So there should be 10 single crochets around. Okay. We're on round 8. That's why I got confused. Okay, so that's stitch 9, and here is stitch 10. Okay, that will be the end of round 8. Now before we start round 9, we want to single crochet 1 and move the stitch marker over yet again. So we're going to single crochet 1 into the next stitch right here. And then we're going to move our stitch marker over yet again. So you kind of see how it's like the stitch marker is kind of moving over and over. It just makes it easiest for understanding where your decreases go, because we want your decreases to be perfectly aligned on each side of your arm. So we single crochet 1, move the stitch marker over, and then now we can start round 9. For round 9, we're going to do 3 single crochets and then an invisible decrease. So we go 3 single crochets, 1, there's 2 and 3, and then an invisible decrease. So we go front loop, and then single crochet. Okay, and then we want to repeat that process one more time. So 3 single crochets and then another invisible decrease. So 1, 2, 3, and then another invisible decrease. So we go front loop, and then there we go, invisible decrease. Okay, and that's going to be the end of round 9. Okay, now before we start round 10, we want to start stuffing our character with our mini magnets. So this can be a little tiny bit tricky if you are new to this. So we have a bunch of mini magnets here. We want to take 2 of our mini magnets and place them into the hand, okay, straight into the center of the hand, all the way to the end. And then if you have your other mini magnets already prepared, you can use them on the outside to make sure your magnets are aligned exactly where you want it to be, so it's right at the end of it. Now, if you've already made some arms, you want to make sure that the arms connect together in a proper way. So you want to make sure that the magnets are facing the right way, because if this was the other way, those magnets won't connect, and you don't want your claws to be differently shaped. See how this claw is kind of pointing that way, and then this claw is kind of pointing that way? Well, if they connected, that's not what we want. We want the claws to be both pointing towards the same direction. So once you already have made one of these claws, you can use the second claw to kind of dictate where the next claw is going to be. So let's imagine that this was our first claw that we were making. In that case, we want to use the other magnets to help position it. But once we have our first claw into position, then we use our second claw to make sure that it is facing the right way. So we take our claw here, and this one is facing a little bit this way. It's kind of hard to tell, but the claws are just kind of barely pointing that way. So we want the other claw to be facing this like this, so that they're both pointing the same direction. Okay, now I find what's easiest is if you keep your magnets there as you're going. So I'm just going to take 2 of my mini magnets here, place it on the top of our piece here to keep those magnets into place. And I find it's easiest to keep crocheting with your magnets in place to keep those magnets where they need to be. And then once you have the magnets where they are, you want to grab some stuffing. You don't need too much stuffing. About like that much is probably good. And then we'll take the back of your crochet hook and I'll just stuff the stuffing in there. And then since the magnets are holding the magnet on the inside in the right position, the stuffing should just go on the outside of the magnet. If you didn't have those other magnets there and you tried to stuff it up without them, the magnet could be lost in the center of the stuffing, which would be a problem because your magnets wouldn't be as strong, because you want your magnets to have as much strength as you can. Okay, so I'm just going to keep these magnets here as I keep going, just to maintain that they are that the magnet stays into the right position as I go. Okay. That's going to be how to add your magnets and stuff it up a little bit. We don't need to stuff it any more than that. So just a little bit of stuffing in the end because we want the rest of it to have a very flat bottom of our arm. Okay. Now we'll pull our stitch marker up. We don't need to move our stitch marker away again. But for our next 3 rounds, rounds 10, 11, and 12, 3 rounds total, we just want to do a single crochet into each stitch around. You should have 8 stitches per round. So 1, 2, 3, there's 4, 5, and oops, you want to make sure you don't work around this tail by accident. 6, 7, and 8 will be right here. Pull our stitch marker up. We want 3 rounds of those single crochets, and then we will connect it together on the inside, which I really like this technique that we're going to use in, I guess technically it's going to be round 13. I think you're really going to like it. I learned this technique coming up from Lemon Yarn Creations, actually, in her red panda pattern. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we got to do one more round of just single crochets. Let's get our stitch marker out and just keep going around. And that's something I really like about doing collaborations, is that I learn new techniques. Every amigurumi artist seems to have their own little techniques that they fall back on for certain parts of their patterns, and it's really fun to learn those. So I really like doing collaboration patterns for that reason. We get to all learn from each other. Okay, so that's going to be right here will be the end of our round 12. And to finish up these claws, we don't need our stitch marker there. We'll just keep it on the side there, is we want to crochet working into both sides of our crochet at the exact same time. So we take our crochet hook, you want to pull our crochet loop pretty tight on it and go into the next stitch right here. And then we want to go into the last stitch from our last round, which is right across from it. So if you look at the top of your piece, we want to go into this stitch as well as the stitch we just went into. So we want to go through this the next stitch in our round, and then through our last stitch in our last round. The first one is the hardest one to get into. Just like that. And what we're doing now is we're going to do a single crochet in through both of these rounds, connecting it, and this will flatten it and make it really easy for us to sew this onto the body. So once you're into both sides there with your crochet hook, you want to do a single crochet through them. So yarn over and scoop it through, and yarn over again and pull through both. Okay, we're going to do that through all the next, we want 4 stitches, single crochets total. We just did 1. So let's go into our second one. Here's the next stitch in the round, and here's the next stitch across from it. There's 2. We'll do it again. Next stitch, and there's 3. And then the last 2, it's kind of hard to see here, but the last 2, you kind of just can go through the side of it like that, and you're into both of those stitches simultaneously. And I'm just going to crochet around our tail end here like that. And you can see how it flattens your piece and sews it together, so you don't have to actually sew it together later. And this was a technique that I learned from Lemon Yarn Creations in her pattern. She did it for the tail of her amigurumi, and so it's just a really cool little technique, and I'm sure I'm going to be using it a lot more often in my patterns. If you need more detailed instructions on how to do that, either let me know in the comments down below, or check out the red panda pattern at the tail, at the very last round of the tail, and I show you how to do it there as well. And the yarn is a little bit clearer than this fuzzy brown yarn, because this fuzzy brown yarn can be kind of hard to see. Okay, so once you've done all those single crochets, to finish up the claw, you want to yarn over and chain 1, pull that through, and then you want to get a decently, not too long of an end, not about that long enough, and then cut the yarn, and then just pull this yarn all the way through your stitch like that, and now you have a little arm. Now you want to make 4 of these arms total, which is I've already done, so I could take this magnet off, and that magnet should be staying into position, and those claws should snap together like that. And then we will go ahead and sew this onto our sloth later on. And what I really like about the magnets that I use is they're tight. They hold together really well. Okay, so that's going to be how to crochet the claws and the arms, and we got all that ready, and now we can finally start working on our body. The body is made all in one piece, so you don't need to sew on a face or anything like that. The face and the body is made together. Okay. Okay, so next up we're going to be working on the body, and now the body has a lot of color changes in it, specifically in the first 3 or 4 rounds. We're going to be doing some really fancy color changes and stuff like that, and it might be really difficult. So we're going to go really, really slowly for just these first 4 rounds because the color changes are so detailed. But once you're done with that, it's so easy after that. It's just basic crochet after that. But the color changes can be really difficult, especially if you're not used to color changes. Don't worry though, we'll be taking it 1 stitch at a time. You want to get your black yarn and your white yarn. We're going to start with our white yarn, and then we're going to come to our black yarn after that. And we're going to start with a magic loop. So we're going to take your yarn, and we're going to do it the exact same way as we did with our body. I'm just going to go ahead and do it really quick since I've already showed you how to do a magic loop. Pull it through. Okay. So we're going to start with round 1 of the body. For round 1, we're going to single crochet 8 times into the magic loop, which is actually exactly what we did to start our arms. So we're just going to single crochet 8 times, and we can start with all white. Okay, so 8 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And now we could pull this nice and tight, like that. And there we go. Now I'm not going to mark where the end of this round, our rounds are, because the color changes are so like drastic anyhow that it's kind of hard to manage the stitch marker while I'm crocheting it. So yeah, we're just going to keep going around. So we're on to round 2 here. Now make sure to change from off-white to black when I mention in the piece. And then if you're reading along with us, there are if you're reading the patterns, there are parts where there's little brackets, and that means that all those stitches are going to be worked into the same stitch. Basically, just follow along with me and take it one stitch at a time here. Okay. So we're starting round 2 now. Now the start of round 2, we're just going to do an increase into the next stitch all in white. So we're going to go into our first stitch right here. Okay. And we're going to do an increase in white. Now I'm going to work around our tail end just for our first 2 stitches here. Okay, an increase means that both single crochets are in the same stitch. We got 1 like that and 2. Okay, now stop. Before you pull through with your white yarn, we want to get our black yarn ready because now is our first color change. So we're going to place our black yarn in between the 2 loops on the hook and the ball attached to the end of yarn. So attached to that. So you're going to take your black yarn, place it in between the two of them. We're going to hold it down with your dominant index finger like this. And then we're going to hold our non-dominant index finger in between the black yarn and the white yarn. And we're going to flip the black yarn under the white yarn like that. Take your crochet hook and yarn over with the black yarn. Get it a little bit more there. And then just pull that through the loop on the stitch like that. Okay, now we've successfully changed to our black yarn. Okay, we pull our white yarn nice and tight there. And now we're just going to pull both of these white ends. We're just going to pull them off to the side like this. Okay, so we're not going to work around any white yarns for our next few stitches. Okay, and then we're going to change colors after that. Okay, so we did our 2 white stitch increase. Now with our black yarn, we want to do 3 single crochets into the next stitch. So it's kind of like a super increase, if you will. So 3 single crochets into the next stitch, all in black. So we go into this next stitch right here. We're going to do 3 single crochets. So we go, oops, let's try that again. 1, 2, and this is going to be 3. We're going to stop for a second because we want to change back to our white yarn. So we're going to take your white yarn and go around the stitch like this, and then we're going to do the same thing as we did with when we changed colors to black. We're going to take your index finger, and I'm just going to hold it under the 2 and then flip it under so that our white yarn is over the black. Yarn over with the white yarn and pull that through the 2 stitches to change back to white. I'm going to pull our black stitch just a little bit more. Okay, now after you're done with that, we can cut the black yarn. I find it's easiest while we're doing our color changes to keep cutting the black yarn as we go. And we probably will be cutting the white yarn as well when we get closer. But it just is the best way so that the black yarn doesn't bleed through the white. That's the hardest thing I've noticed is it can be very difficult to make your stitches and not have the black yarn bleed through it. So this is a good technique for me. I just cut the black yarn, I pull it nice and tight, and I pull it off to the side. Okay, so we've changed to our white yarn. Now we want to do an increase into the first stitch, a single crochet, and then another increase all in our white yarn. So we'll start with our increase. 1, 2, so an increase, then a single crochet, and then another increase in white. And then we're going to change back to our black yarn. So there's 1 and 2. Now don't pull through with your white yarn because we're going to change back to black yarn now. So grab our black yarn, place it in between, index finger to hold it down, index finger between the 2 colors, and then flip under, yarn over the black yarn, and pull through to change to black. And pull our white yarn a little tighter. Okay, so we've changed to our black yarn. We'll pull our white yarn to the side. And next with our black yarn, we want to do another 3 single crochets into the next stitch, all in black yarn. So take our black yarn, go into the next stitch right here, and do 3 single crochets. 1, 2, and here's our 3rd, and then we want to change back to white. So we take our white yarn, place it over, and do the same thing where we hold under and we flip under so the white yarn's on top, yarn over with our white yarn, and pull that through, and pull our black yarn a little tighter. Okay, now we take our black yarn, pull it to the side like that, and we can cut the black yarn. And all these little extra threads are going to be hidden on the inside, so we don't need to worry about them. You just need to make sure you don't accidentally crochet around them. Okay, so now we've changed to white, and to finish this round up with our white yarn, we want to do an increase into the next stitch. So 1 and 2. And then to the last stitch right here, we want to do one more single crochet with our white stitch. But we don't want to finish up and pull through with white just yet, because in our next round, we want to do something even crazier than our last round. Now, you don't have to do these half color changes that I'm about to explain, but it does make your piece look a lot better. If you do your half color changes, see how crisp the division between the face and the body is? That's because I do half color changes into this next round that we're about to work into. So I find it makes it a lot cleaner, but it is more difficult, no question. So again, another round where it's just going to be very difficult, but we'll go nice and slow. Hey, Future Lou here. Before you start your brown stitches here, you're going to need some extra brown yarn. I forgot to mention it when I was doing it, so this is me coming back and saying, hey, cut off a little bit of brown yarn, about maybe that much, maybe a little bit more of brown yarn before you start this next part. What we need to do is we need to grab our brown yarn before we finish this last stitch, and we're going to place our brown yarn over the stitch, then yarn over with your white yarn and pull through the 2 loops with white yarn to finish up that last single crochet. And now we are on to the next round. Okay, so next we want to do something I call a perfect stripe method, which is where we're going to do these half color changes, but we want to set it up first. So the first thing we want to do is we want to slip stitch into the next stitch in our white yarn. So go into the next stitch and do a slip stitch with white. 1 and 2. And then we want to change over to our brown yarn. So we flip the brown under, yarn over with brown, and then do a chain with our brown yarn like that. Okay, and then I'm going to pull my white yarn just a little tighter. All right, so for this next round, I'm going to be doing the bottom of the stitches in our colors, our white or our black, depending on the stitch. But the top of the stitch, our final pull through with each color, will be brown, okay? I'll explain it as I go. Now, our first stitch, we want to work into the same stitch that we just made a slip stitch into. Okay, now round 3, we're going to start by doing 2 single crochets in white yarn, starting in the same stitch that you made that slip stitch into. So we're going to take your white yarn, make sure it's over the brown yarn, and go into the stitch, starting in the same stitch you slip stitched into, so right there. Go into that stitch, yarn over with our white yarn, and pull that through the stitch, like that. And then take your index finger, hold it in between the 2 colors, and then flip under so the brown yarn is on top, yarn over with brown, and pull that through the 2 loops to finish that single crochet in white. Okay, so there's the first one, and we're going to keep doing that with the brown yarn. We're going to change to the brown right before we finish the stitch. Okay, but next we flip back under so that the white yarn is on top, because our next stitch is a white stitch. We're going to go into our next stitch right here and just do 1 single crochet in white, so we pull through with white. Now hold here just for a second and grab your black yarn, because now we're going to change to black. We're going to hold the black yarn in between the brown, the white, and the black, like that. And we're going to flip under with the brown yarn, so it's under the white, and then yarn over with brown and pull it through the 2 loops with brown. Okay. Pull that white stitch just a little tighter. Okay, now we're going to pull this white stitch just to the side like this. Actually, we can just cut it. Let's go ahead and cut the white yarn. Leave it somewhat long. I'm also going to cut this tail end of from the very beginning, just because we can. We're going to hold that white yarn off to the side, and now we're going to be working in our brown yarn for our next few stitches. So our next stitch is going to be an increase stitch in black with brown pulled through at the very end. So we're going to switch back over so that black is on top, go into the next stitch right here, and then do an increase with black. So we're going to pull through with black and then switch back so that brown, we always pull through with the brown, switch back to brown, yarn over and pull through the 2 loops with brown. And we're doing an increase stitch in black. So that means that we're going to work in the same stitch, switch back over so that black's on top, and go into the same exact stitch, yarn over and pull through with our black yarn, and then switch back over so that brown is on top, like that, yarn over with brown, and pull through the 2 loops with brown. Okay, so we did our 2 single crochets with white, or increase with black. Now we want to do 1 single crochet with black, so we flip back over so black's on top, into the next stitch, do a single crochet, pull through with black, then switch back over to brown, like that, yarn over with our brown yarn, and pull through the 2 loops with brown. Pull our black a little tighter there. Okay, and our next stitch we want an increase in black, so we want to switch back over to black, go into the next stitch, pull through with your black yarn, switch back over to brown, flip under, yarn over with brown, pull through the stitches with brown. Okay. Now we're doing another stitch into the same stitch because we're doing an increase in black. Switch back to black, go into the stitch, pull through with black, and we're going to pull through with brown, but we want to grab our white yarn again. So before I grab our white yarn, see how it's all tangled up there? Pull your white yarn out from the tangle. Place it over the yarn, and then switch to brown yarn. Switch it under, yarn over with your brown yarn, and pull through the 2 loops with brown to finish that stitch there. And pull the black yarn just a little tighter. Now we can cut our black yarn. Pull the black yarn off to the side, and then unwind the black yarn. See, it's all tangled again. So unwind the black yarn out of that tangle. Okay, now we're going to stay as with white yarn for 5 single crochets, but of course we're going to be pulling through with brown yarn at the end of each of the single crochets. So let's do our first one here. Okay, so make sure that the white yarn's on top. We go into the next stitch, and we pull through with white yarn. Make sure that tail end doesn't get pulled too far, and then switch to brown and pull through the 2 with brown. We're just doing single crochets with white. So we go 1. Switch to white, pull through, switch back to brown. Make sure you're always spinning in the same direction. Pull through with brown. 1, 2, back to white. Next stitch, switch to brown, pull through 2. Okay, there's 3, white. Next stitch, pull through with white, switch back to brown, pull through 2 with brown. Okay, we're almost done with this round. And this, I promise, this is the most difficult part of the pattern. Once you're done with this round, it's like all downhill. Okay, switch back to white. We're going to do 1 last single crochet right here. And then we're going to get our black yarn prepared because we're going to change back to black yarn. Okay. Place the black yarn over the 2 stitches. Switch to brown so that we can pull through our 2 loops with brown. And have our black yarn prepared. Pull the white nice and tight. We're going to cut the white yarn and just pull the white yarn off to the side and pull the white yarn out so it's untangled. Okay. Now the next few stitches are going to be the same as our black stitches over here. We're going to do an increase first, then a single crochet, then an increase, all with black yarn. But of course, we're going to keep pulling through with brown yarn at the top so that the top layer is brown. So we're going to switch over so black's on top, go into the next stitch, and we're going to do an increase into this next stitch in black. So we pull through with black, switch back to brown, yarn over, and pull through with brown. And we're going to do another stitch into the same place, switch back to black, into the same stitch, pull through with black, switch back to brown, and pull through 2 with brown. Okay, so now we have our first increase in black, then a single crochet in the next, switch back to black, 1 single crochet into the next stitch, switch back to brown, and pull through. Okay, and you can see how I'm consistently pulling my stitches so that I keep a consistent gauge as I'm doing these color changes. That's really important. Okay, next stitch. Last stitch in black is going to be an increase. So we switch back over so black's on top. Go into the next stitch right here. Pull through. And then switch to brown. And pull through 2 with brown. Okay, we want one more stitch into the same place with black because our last stitch here is an increase. So we did an increase in black, a single crochet in black, and then another increase in black. So we go 1. This is our second of our increase, like that. Wait a second before you switch back to brown because we need to grab our white yarn for our final color change back to white. So we're going to place the white yarn in between, then switch over to brown yarn, pull yarn over with brown and pull through the 2 loops with brown and pull that black yarn a little tighter. And now we can cut the black yarn. We won't need black yarn for the rest of this pattern, so that's actually all that we needed with our black yarn. And we can finish the round up with our white yarn. Pull that a little tighter there. Okay, so now we want to do our final 3 single crochets in white. Okay, so here's our first one. We got 1, switch to brown, 2, and 1 more right here is going to be 3. And then switch back to brown and pull that tighter. Now it looks like our next stitch right here is another stitch to work into. I know it does, but it's not. It is deceiving you. That is the slip stitch that we did in the beginning of the round to change over to a brown yarn. And we did that so that our rounds will line up together really well. So just skip that slip stitch right here, and instead we're going to slip stitch into this brown yarn. So we're going to take your brown yarn here. We can pull our white yarn off to the side. We don't need it at all anymore. We're just going to go into that first brown yarn there and do a slip stitch like that. Okay. And we can cut our white yarn. I know it's a mess on the back there. Cut our white yarn right there. And then we're just going to pull our white yarn out. And we actually don't need anything but brown yarn for the rest of the crochet pattern here. Okay. There we go. Okay, so next up, we are on to rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. So 4 rounds in a row. All that we got to do with those 4 rounds is single crochet in brown yarn. Okay, but before we start that, we need to chain 1 with our brown. We only need to do this for the first round, is chain 1 with brown and work into the same stitch that you slip stitched into right here. Okay, so right where you slip stitch into it and do a single crochet with brown. Okay, just for the first round, you need to do that. From now on, we can just single crochet into our regular stitches, but we're going to make sure we skip that slip stitch that we did at the end of our last round. So we're just going to go into each of the stitches, make sure you're under both loops there, and we're just going to do a single crochet into each stitch all the way around. There should be 20 stitches around, so this is a good time for you to count your stitches. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and this will be 20. Now, again, it looks like this is another stitch we could work into, but it is deceiving you. Do not believe that stitch. It is not true. Okay, so now I'm just going to fold it out so that these stitches are on the outside, because it was kind of like pulling in instead of we want it to go that way. Okay, so we're going to skip that slip stitch from the last round right there. I'm going to work into the first single crochet that we made right here. If you're having a hard time telling which one is which, count back from your last stitch that you made. Count back 20 stitches. So if you count back all the way in your stitches, this will be stitch 1. Not this. Important. This one. It's important for keeping track of your count. Okay, before I work into that stitch, let's get our stitch marker again so we can keep track. So we're just going to place the yarn, the stitch marker over. We're going to skip that slip stitch. We're going to start single crocheting around. Okay. All right, so we have 4 rounds total of single crochets, and this is our second round. So technically, we are on round 5 right now, and we want to do rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7 are all just single crochet stitches. And if you're working with this exact same brown yarn as I am, it's really easy to accidentally crochet too tightly with this brown yarn. So try to loosen up your stitches a little bit and relax, because I mean, it doesn't look too bad when the stitches are too tight, but it does like help your stitches along if you just kind of loosen it up and make your character look a little bit nicer, in my opinion, if you just kind of stay loose. Oops, he's almost lost our stitch marker there. That's 19. Here's our 20th stitch in round 5. Pull our stitch marker up, and we'll just keep going around. We're on to round 6, which is another round where it's just single crochets all the way around. If you had trouble with that face and you would like any more advice, or you have any feedback at all about anything, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to help, or someone there can help. You can also check out the Discord channel or the Facebook group. That is a great place to ask questions, or the Reddit, the subreddit, r/clubcrochet. Any 3 of those places are a great place to ask for some help. And I know this part of the pattern can be really, the face of this pattern can be really, really difficult. I do find that after you make it one time, if you try again right away, it'll be a lot easier 2 times in a row. I just find that it's just a lot easier to do after you understand what you're doing the first time. So I find it's very easy to make like a bunch of these sloths in a row. Also, I know it's difficult, but I do find it pretty fun to do that weird face as well. It was really fun to design, at least. Okay, so we're almost done with round 7, our 4 rounds of just single crochets. There we go. 1, 2, and this is going to be our last stitch for round 7. Pull our stitch marker out, because now we want to add our face. Here's what we're going to do. So first we're going to add our eyes. Now our eyes go into round 2, stitches 5 and 12. That's a very specific spot, but the best way to tell is those little slip stitches that you did, that's the top of the face, and there's the bottom of the face. Our eyes go into the bottom, like right here, right in between, in the very center, like that. Okay, so that right there is technically round, or stitch 12 in round 2. Let's grab our other one, and then the other one, see where that little white bit is? It's going to go right above that and hopefully hide that little white. There we go, just like that. Okay, now we're going to take our little locking mechanism on the inside, right there. Just lock those eyes into place. Okay, there we go. Now we want to add some eyelids to our eyes. This is just a personal preference that I really like to do. So you want to grab a little bit extra of your brown yarn. It's really great if you cut it before you start that, but I forgot to mention that. Maybe I'll put a disclaimer. Actually, I'm just going to put a disclaimer before we start with our brown yarn right now. Okay, so we're going to thread our brown yarn onto our needle. And we're just basically making eyelids now to go over our cute little eyes. And this just makes your guy look a little sleepy, which I think is perfect for a sloth. I like to take the top of it and go in through one side of the eye, like right there. Okay, try to get as close to the eye as you can, like into the stitch that you worked your eye into, like right like that. Yeah, that should be good. And we're just going to go across the eye. Okay, so I pull it through and then I unthread the yarn off the needle and then I thread it onto the other side of the needle because I find it's easiest to go in through the front of the eye than it is to come out through the back. So I'm going to go across to right here, okay, so that it's angled a little bit. We're looking to try to mimic this. See how it goes in through one side of the eye and then through kind of the top of the eye? Like that. Yeah, that's pretty good. See? That's exactly what we're looking for. Now you can go over it twice if you'd like. Go ahead and pull it just a little tighter. You want to be very delicate while you're double knotting this on the inside, because if you pull it too tight, the yarn will disappear into the back of your eyeball. So we just kind of want to barely double knot it, not pull it too tight so that the yarn accidentally disappears. That, yeah, perfect. And we can cut the yarn nice and close on the inside. 1 and 2. Okay, so there's one eyelid. Now we want to do the same on the other side. So we'll go out through one side of the eye, or in through one side of the eye, I should say. Get as close to the eye as possible. That's okay, well, that's going to have to do. Go through, let the yarn off the needle, and then thread the other side of the yarn. We're going to go over the eye, in through the top right here. And be very gentle with it. Great. And we're just going to double knot these nice and soft. 1. Oops. And 2. Okay, good. You can see I'm really worried about the yarn getting pulled out behind the eye. You do not want that. It's hard to fix if you pull it too tight. Okay, so we got our eyes and our eyelids on there. Next thing we want to do is we want to add a nose between these stitches there. So what we want to do is we want to grab our just a little bit of our brown yarn. Okay, so we want to just grab a little bit of our brown yarn. I don't like using the fuzzy brown for this, so if you can avoid using fuzzy brown, that's probably best. I'm not even going to cut this because this is what comes with the kit, and this is exactly about how much we need. This is the only place that you need this brown yarn. Thread it onto a needle, like that. And we want to come, I actually think that it's best to come out through the inside for the nose. And I like to come out through this stitch right here, and then go across to this stitch right here, and then repeat it like 4 or 5 times. Go through that stitch. I'm going to pull it almost all the way through just so I have a little bit more so we can knot it together. And I can go in through that other stitch across. So just 1, 2 stitches over, and then come out through that same stitch. Like that. Okay, we could just do 1, but I like doing a bunch of them. So 1, 2. Let's see how 3 looks. Let's do 1 more. See, that'll be 4. I think 4 will be good. So let's go ahead and do 4 and go through. Yeah, that looks good. I like 4. Okay. And then we'll take these 2 ends of our brown yarn, and we can just double knot those. 1. And 2. Okay. Cut the yarn nice and close. Like that. So now we've got our nose and our eyes. The next thing we want to do is we want to add just a little bit of a smile under the under the eyes to give him like this soft, kind face. So I like to use this black thread for this, just a little bit of black thread. This also comes with a kit if you have got it. We'll grab our needle and thread on the end of our black yarn. And I just like to put the mouth right at the bottom right here. Okay, so under the eye right here. And then just go across to over to here. And I don't like to like go over it twice. I think one is good, and it kind of follows. See how it kind of follows the stitches so that it already makes a nice little smile. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now we could just double knot these two ends on the inside to keep the smile into place. There we go, 1 and 2. Make sure he looks good. Oh, he's so cute. Look at how soft and sweet he is. Oh, I love him. Okay. And we'll just cut these nice and close on the inside and toss that to the side. Okay, let's clean up our station a little bit because that brown yarn is shedding a bit. Place that up, and there we go. That's going to be how to crochet the face. I mean, how to add the face, I should say. Oh, shoot, one more thing. Forgot. You want to grab just a little bit more of your brown yarn. So take a little bit more of your brown yarn, thread that on a needle, your fuzzy brown specifically, not your like nose brown. And then what I like to do is I like to cover up these stitches by doing kind of like little hair tuft there. So I'm going to come out through basically right where that stitch marker is, so right there. Okay, and let it leave just a little bit left over on the outside there so I have something to double knot it to. And then I'm going to go in through just a few stitches and then come out through the next stitch over. I'm basically just embroidering some hair. And you don't need to pull it too tight, so I like to leave it a little loose like that. And then go back through, come out through wherever the next one is. Let's go like right, I don't know, looks right here. See what that looks like. Oh, that's a little low. Let's go up a stitch right to there. Yeah. Down. Let's come out right there. Like this. And back down. And then I'm just going to double it up on just the middle hair tufts. So I'm just going to go back around and come through the middle hair tufts again. Get a little bit more. Just to kind of like, just to add a little bit more. Yeah. And I really, really like doing this. Not only because it helps cover up where those, the round color changes are, which is nice, but it also just adds a little bit of like bump to the top of his head, which I just think is, I don't know, I just really like how cute that looks. Okay, so I'm just gonna double knot these on the inside. Go 1 and 2. Okay. We'll cut it nice and close. Like that. All right. And there we go. Okay, and that's going to be how to make your face. Now we can continue crocheting around, and we are on round 8. Round 8, we're going to do another round of just single crochets all the way around. There should still be only 20 stitches around, and you just got to single crochet all the way around. So just another round of just single crochets around for round 8. So just single crochet all the way all the way. We're just adding a little bit of extra length for our sloth's neck. You can keep going if you wanted to after round 8 here. If you wanted to make your sloth have like an even longer neck, now's your chance. You could just keep doing rounds of single crochets to add some length to your sloth's neck if you like. Okay, so now we're going to pull our stitch marker up and we are on to round 9. For round 9, we're going to single crochet 7. We're going to start by single crocheting 7. We're going to be doing an increase after that. So let's do 7 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then we're going to do an increase after that. So 7 single crochets and then an increase. There's 1 and 2. And then we're going to do 5 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then another increase. 1 and 2. And then we're going to finish up by doing 6 more single crochets to get to the end of this round. And this is going to bring you up from 20 stitches to 22 stitches. So you should have 22 stitches by the end of round 9 here. And there is our last one right there. Okay, I'll pull our stitch marker up. And we are on to round 10. For round 10, nice and easy, single crochets into each stitch all the way around. So just 22 single crochet stitches all the way till you get to the end of the round. Pretty easy, easy squeezy, lemon peasy. Let's get more yarn. This is a great opportunity for you to count your stitches if you haven't been already. Okay, just a few more stitches here. Okay. And that's going to be the end of round 10. For round 11, we're going to pull our stitch marker up. And we're going to do 10 single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then you could do an increase into the next stitch. 1 and 2. And then 2 single crochets. 1, 2. And then another increase. 1, 2. And then finish up by doing 8 single crochets to get to the end of the round. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Pull our stitch marker up. Now for our next 2 rounds, rounds 12 and 13, 2 rounds in a row, we just need to do single crochets into each stitch all the way around. You should have 24 stitches per round. So we'll just keep going, crocheting around, and count your stitches. Make sure you only have 24 stitches around for 2 rounds total. Okay, and this is going to be the end of round 13, our 2 rounds of just single crochets. Now we can pull our stitch marker up. We are on to round 14. For round 14, we're going to do a single crochet into the first stitch right here. And then we'll do an invisible decrease, which means we're going to go into the front loop, 1 of the next 2 stitches, 2, and then single crochet. So 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease, and then we're going to do 21 single crochets to get to the end of the round. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these invisible decreases are going to start to bring his back down. So he's going to be kind of like hunched over a little bit. And this should bring you down from 24 stitches down to 23 stitches by the end of round 14. Okay, almost done with this round. Okay, that should be 22, and there we go. There's our 23rd stitch, and that'll be the end of round 14. Pull our stitch marker up. Now for round 15, we're going to do 1 single crochet again, and then another invisible decrease, front loop, and then just single crochets for the next 20 stitches around. And this will bring you down from 22 stitches, or 23 stitches down to 22 stitches. So you should have 22 stitches now at the end of round 15 here. Okay. Just a few more stitches. 1, 2, and done. Okay, that'll be the end of round 15. For round 16, we're going to pull our stitch marker up. We're going to do 1 single crochet and an invisible decrease. Single crochet 1, invisible decrease 1, and then single crochet into the remaining 19 stitches to go to the end of this round. We'll count these just to make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, get a little more yarn, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19. That'll be the end of round 16, and you should have 21 stitches around at the end of this round. Okay, all right, only a few more rounds left. For round 17, we're going to pull our stitch marker up, and we're going to do 5 single crochets and then an invisible decrease repeated 3 times around. So let's do that first one. 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then an invisible decrease. So front loop, and then single crochet. So 5 single crochets, invisible decrease, repeated 3 times. Let's do our second repeat. 5 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then an invisible decrease. Front loop, and there we go. One more repeat, 5 single crochets, and then our final invisible decrease. And this should bring you down from 21 stitches to 28 stitches at the end of this round. Okay, here's our last invisible decrease. And you should have 18 stitches around now. Pull our stitch marker up, and we are on to round 18. For round 18, we're going to do 1 single crochet into the first stitch and then an invisible decrease into the next stitch. Front loop, there we go. And we're going to repeat that process 6 times total. So a single crochet, invisible decrease 6 times in a row. Let's do a second repeat. 1 single crochet, 1 invisible decrease. Just keep going. Single crochet. This is the third repeat. Invisible decrease. And this is going to bring you down from 18 stitches to 12 stitches. So you should have 12 stitches by the end of round 18 here. Single crochet. Oops, get that stitch marker out of the way. Get out of here. And then an invisible decrease. Last one, single crochet and invisible decrease. Okay. We're going to hold on for just a second, pull our stitch marker out a little bit, and we're going to stuff it mostly. Not all the way, but pretty much all the way we need to be stuffed up. So we're going to take our stuffing and it's easiest just to stuff it mostly right now than it is to do it after the next round, because our next round is going to be basically decreasing it all the way down. And it can be kind of difficult to get a lot of stuffing in there when the hole is that tiny. So it's easiest to do it while you got some space. You don't want to overstuff him, of course. Let's see how we're doing here. Okay, I like to squish his head like this so that it stays a little bit skinnier. Kind of see our shaping is done. See those invisible decreases in the back are bringing us down. And the increases were right here in the belly to give him a little bit of a belly. I would say that's stuffed mostly. Get our stitch marker up and continue in our piece. So we are on to our last round, round 19. And for our final round, we're just going to do an invisible decrease into each stitch around. That's 6 invisible decreases total, which will bring you down from 12 stitches down to 6. We'd go invisible decrease. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to be 5, and our last round right here, our last stitch, is going to be boom. All right, 6 single crochets around. We can cut our yarn. We don't need to leave too long of an end because we're just going to stuff and sew it closed. And then finally, we can stuff our piece. Now I'm just going to pull out our stitch marker fully before I start. And then we're just going to stuff the back of our piece right there. Grab a little stuffing. And I like to use the back of my crochet hook to help. It helps grab the stuffing, the rubber back of my crochet hook. If you don't have a rubber backed crochet hook like this, try using a pencil with an eraser and use the eraser end to help push that stuffing up there. And like I said before, you don't want to add too much stuffing, but this wool is actually very deceiving with how much stuffing is in there. It feels like sometimes there's a lot, but then, I don't know, it just stretches a lot. I think you can do a little bit more because that's a little too squishy to me. Let's see if we can get the rest of the stuffing in there. Might be too much. Let's do half and then see if we can get that rest of the half in. Okay. Just about there. Let's do 1. Let's see, is that? Yeah, you know what? Let's call it there. I don't even want to risk it with that last bit because I really don't want to overstuff it if I can avoid doing that. All right, so now we can sew our sloth closed. We'll thread the end of a needle here. And then to sew it closed, I'm just going to go into the front loops of all the stitches around for our last round. Okay, so only under those front loops. We'll go 1, front loop, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's our last one, 6. You can pull it tight and then go back through the center and come out pretty much anywhere you want on the side of our piece. Pull it nice and tight there. We can just cut that nice and close. Okay, and the last thing we want to do is we want to sew the arms and legs onto our piece. They kind of are all arms because they're all the same look. So I like to keep the arms connected with the magnets as I sew it onto our piece so that we know exactly where we want to sew them. Okay, and we want each of the claws, remember how I was saying how each of the claws kind of point downwards towards your piece? I forgot to pull the stitch marker out of this guy. Let's get that out there. So remember how I said that those claws we want to be pointing down towards the back? See how they have this like kind of angle to them? One side points that way, one side kind of points that way. It's kind of hard to tell, but it's there. So we want those to be pointed downwards so that it's like this. So this would be right, and then this would be wrong. Okay, so if I turn these around like that, see how those are pointed up towards his face? We don't want that. We want them to be pointing down. Okay. We're going to start with these top ones. Now you'll see that there's 2 ends coming out of each of these arms. This one's from the center of our piece from the very start, and then this part is from the end where we chained 1 and pulled it through. We want to start by threading the end from the inside first. So thread that onto our needle. And then place your arms where you want them. It's like right there is fine. And we want to have 5 stitches. We're going to sew it on with 5 stitches, and we want the last one to be right there. So we want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're just like traveling up the arm. 3, 4, 5. Boom. So we're going to start in that first one, come out to the bottom, and then thread the other end on a needle. And we're going to go through where this first one goes in, so right there, come out through the next stitch right here, and then go down through the stitches on the arm, come in through the body, come out through the next stitch. Do I want it right there? Yeah. Body, body, there. Do couple more, come out right here, go in through the last stitch of the arm, into the body, and come back out through where that other end is coming out, so we have something to double knot it to. Okay, and that keeps our arm in place. Oh, perfect. I love it. I love it. All right, let me just double knot these on the inside. 1 and 2. Cut the yarn and just kind of like squeeze it so that the knot gets hidden back into our piece like that. Okay, so now once you have the first one on there, just keeping them connected, it's easier to go with the second half. And the second half is going to be sewn the other way around, so from the top of the head down. And you want to make sure, because you had just a little bit of spacing, so you want to make sure that they're sewn into the same row as the first one. So it'll be right there. And we'll start with the inside, the smaller end first. We'll go in there, come out somewhere on the back, that, and then we could thread our other end and do exactly what we did with our first one, but going down the body instead. In through here, 1. Let's go like this. Make sure it's pulled tight as you're going. Boom, boom. Out to right there. And then come out through back where that other end is, so we can thread it onto the, or we can sew 2 ends together, and his arms are going to be sewn on. One and 2. Okay. Push that end in. Okay, so we got our arms on. Now we need the back legs, arms, larms. That's what it is. Sewn on right here. And I'll go ahead and do it exactly like I did it before. I just want them to be in the same position, so they're like down like that. Okay, so you don't want to like, you just want to make sure that they're connected. Make sure that that angle is going down, so they're not angled in like that. Instead, they're angled out like that. So I'll go ahead and sew these on, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, and then finally, I got my back leg sewn on. I could just double knot these on the inside for our back leg. Cut the ends. And There we go. Our little sloth is sewn together. Look at how cute Simon is. Oh my God, he's so cute. I love him. And I'll grab onto anything. Let's have him grab onto our crochet hook here. And there we go. Little Simon the Sloth. I am so proud of this pattern. I really, really hope you guys like this pattern. If you do, please give it a like down below. Subscribe to the channel. I come out with videos like this all the time. And if you want to check out more patterns that are really cool and similar, check out more of our collaboration patterns. There's a red panda made by Lemon Yarn Crafts that I think is really cute. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. And then our rhino black rhino specifically, made by Sir Pearl Grey. And these are part of the World Wildlife Fund fundraiser that we are doing right now. So if you like any of these patterns, please consider checking them out. You can check them out at clubcrochet.com/earthday2021 and share a picture with me. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks so much again for watching this pattern. I know there's a lot going on in this pattern, so if you did complete it and would like to share a picture with me, I would very, very much appreciate it, just because I know how difficult this is, and I'm very curious of how many people actually can complete it. Okay, well, thanks again for watching. Pasta la pizza, and happy hooking. Bye-bye. Goodbye. That's how I think Simon talks. Bye. Oh, bye. Bye.